Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of Supply Chain Talk. I'm Alistair Chariton, your host this week, and our main topic is reimagining reverse logistics, navigating costs and trends in fast fashion returns. Before that, I'll introduce my guests and we'll talk about a topical news item before getting on to the main topic. So, without further ado, I just want to remind you of some of the things that we'll follow as usual, which are that there is the chat panel to the right of your screen. So please, if you're registered and therefore able to see that chat panel watching on Zoom, please do join in the chat and post your questions and comments. We'll try to respond to them as much as we can. And as always, the comment we value the most will receive a Supply Chain Talk mug. Let me then introduce my three guests, the first of whom is Mustafa Keshteli, who is Associate Professor for Research of Industrial Engineering at Tecnológico de Monterrey. So Professor Keshteli is a recognized and highly cited researcher in supply chain design and nearshoring, which will become particularly relevant, I'm sure, in future months, but that'll be for another topic. And his research interests focus on creating innovative supply chains, particularly in the field of energy. And away from work, Mustafa is deeply involved in exploring the keto diet. He enjoys reading about history and the philosophy of science, and he's also proficient in 5 languages and has a passion for linguistics, literature, and cultural understanding. So welcome, Mustafa. Nice to see you again. My second guest is Ray Fowler, who is director at For Partnership. Ray has been helping a broad range of clients in the retail and industrial sectors for the past 30 years and for the last 6 years through his own company, consulting business For Partnership. His clients include major companies across the UK, Europe, and worldwide, such as Tesco, Asda Walmart, Nissan, eBay, Unilever, and ASOS. And outside of work, he's realizing his dream of setting up his own woodworking operation in a converted garage with old and new tools. So welcome, Ray.
Thank you, Alistair.
And finally, we're joined by Sam Taylor, who is the founder of The Good Factory. Sam is a third-generation garment producer and has worked in the apparel industry as a product developer for more than 20 years. And today she specializes in circular product creation and the implementation of sustainable strategies within the supply chain, which, of course, is a hugely important topic these days. Away from work, her friends say that Sam loves random facts. And so a conversation with her is like microdosing on Wikipedia. So bring in random facts and relevant facts today to make an exciting conversation. So our news item is in fact on ASOS, a company that Ray is familiar with, and it's from a few weeks ago in retailgazette.co.uk. So you can see the link being posted up there, and it's headed up ASOS launches subscription and rental service with Higher Street in the biggest UK collaboration. So the article, it's a short piece which just basically says how Higher Street, which is a fashion rental company, has now linked up with ASOS, and in this arrangement, Higher Street subscribers will be able to rent 5 garments per month for £75, and they can choose, the article says, they can choose from 20,000 ASOS products. And the two companies have previously collaborated on a rental service, and last year they had 180 of the fashion giant's women's wear products on offer. So they're talking about 20,000 now, which is a 100 times increase, and it just talks about what the initial drop of products will be. And finally, Higher Street commented that this will mark a step forward for the UK rental market. It's worth sort of saying that when I looked just yesterday, there were in fact 464 ASOS choices, so rather short of the 20,000, but it is the first drop. And that Higher Street had 3,246 choices in total. So I guess ASOS can become, well, already is, a significant minority percentage of the choices on offer on Higher Street, and if they certainly have 20,000 additional products, it will make a huge difference. And I think what's really interesting about this, before we get into returns, is of course that this is a really innovative alternative to buying clothes. Rather than wear an item a few times, which so many people do in fast fashion, and then it just sits in a cupboard or just gets thrown away or sold off on one of the secondhand clothing sites. This is offering that for £900 per year, you could buy you can rent limitless items, 5 per month for the whole year, which certainly would cost you an awful lot more to buy. And it's worth saying that the subscription model is very well designed. Even if it's fast fashion, you're not going to be getting a very low cost item sent to you, and then it has to be collected, and then it has to be cleaned, etc. You have to do 5 in one go. So at the end of your month, you return the 5 items you've rented, and then you can order your next 5 to be delivered. So it's kind of well designed in that way. So turning first to you, Mustafa, do you think that large numbers of eco-conscious consumers are going to be renting instead of buying in the future?
Thank you very much for the invitation and your question. Actually, because I'm the first one, let us talk about maybe rapidly about the preliminaries. So we are facing marketing trends, maybe competitors, and finally we should sell our product. So I think reverse logistics is inevitable. But during the last, I think, 2 decades, we started from production and then supply chain, green supply chain, sustainable supply chain, circular supply chain. So and now we are talking about like a renting or maybe having some middle strategy from between 2 extremes, not having reverse logistics and having like a fully reverse logistics by accepting maybe the products that maybe like a second-hand product or used and they didn't accept that. I think in this journey, we should focus, and I think this is the best way that to say that the only thing that could survive and help us in this journey was technology and science. Okay, so having like a rent or something like this one, in my opinion, is like an old strategy. Now we are talking about AI. We can have like a local showrooms, for example, or asking AI when you are buying clothes. It can help you that it is good for you or it is fit for you, or you can maybe send your maybe everything relates to dimension that they can send and receive feedback or something like that. But anyway, renting is one strategy that it is old strategy, not like the recent one, not like a cutting edge, but it can maybe cover some like some part of our customers. If you are focusing on the like Ishikawa, like a fishbone of the reasons of sending back the products or maybe not satisfying from the using that product. So if you focus on that, according to my experience, renting is not like the main solution, at least. Okay, but it can solve a part of the problem.
Okay, thank you. And Ray, I mean, I know you've done a lot of work in logistics. I mean, I guess the thing about renting is you're definitely getting a return, and you're definitely getting a re-clean and whatever. So do you think it's got a good role to play in an eco society?
In logistics, we don't want to know anything about things coming back, do we?
No.
However, we've seen these rental models before. Rent the runway. We've seen My Wardrobe, even John Lewis, the department store in the UK, are now doing it. But what it means is that you've got to build a capability and a facility to cope with repurposing those goods. And then you've got to look at what is the disposition of those goods. Are you then going to put them back into good stock and then rent them again? Or are you actually going to sell them at a markdown rate? Or are you going to have to dispose of them? And I think those become the economic triggers that people have to decide on if they're going to go down this route.
Yeah, that's interesting, and it's worth mentioning that certainly Higher Street, and I'm sure other fashion rental companies, they do have pretty strict terms and conditions to say, you no adjusting the clothing before you send it back, or when you wear it, kind of obviously the tags can be removed because it's you're renting it and paying money for the use of it, but nonetheless they're pretty strict. But
if I could just add to that, fashion retailers have suffered with this problem for decades, where people would buy product on a Friday, take it out, party, have a lot of fun, and then bring it back on a Monday. So fashion retailers have already had to cope with this problem as such. This is just maybe making it more legitimate.
Yes, that's a good way of looking at it. Just before I get to you, Sam, just to remind anyone who's just joined, do open up the chat box if you've joined on Zoom, and share your insights, confessions that you've been a weekend purchaser and then return it on a Monday. Anything like that would be welcome as well. Sam, what are your thoughts? Obviously, you specialize very much in the circular economy. Do you think the rental the rental model has got a big future?
Do, but I'm not sure it's with ASOS. So I do use a rental service, and it is predominantly for events where I'm probably only going to wear something once, and it's normally sort of that higher end level. So, for weddings, and I'm more than happy to spend sort of, £95 for a really beautiful dress that costs £100 to wear it once and send it back. But the thing that you notice with the differences these is the quality. And, seeing across the high street now over the last 20 years that I've been in the industry, the quality is now so much lower than it used to be. And really, what are ASOS expecting? They're going to, bring in a t-shirt, perhaps somebody's going to wash it, the spirality is going to go, and then what? Somebody else is going to have that and rent that? Because I'm not going to wear a t-shirt that turns up and you're paying £75 a month subscription for, and it's twisted and it doesn't fit properly because somebody's washed it. So I think there's a real question to be asked about whether they can achieve the quality that's going to be required to keep that product in use. Because in terms of, if we're looking at the carbon footprint per wear, then rental is a great example, is a great way to increase that usage. But if it's a naff product and it doesn't wash well, it's not durable, it's just not going to cut the mustard.
Yes, and I think we should probably say that we're not implying in any way that every product from ASOS is naff, but absolutely lower price products are likely to be a lower quality and lower durability. And it's also worth saying that the higher street, while the announcement talks about higher street and ASOS, actually it's just higher street. It's the higher street rental model, and for that £75 a month, you can rent 5 of any garment, including items, £300 items, £500 items, not a £50 ASOS item. So you're right, Sam. It does kind of raise the question: is it really a suitable model to replace fast fashion versus being a great model to be more effective for high-end fashion, which may well be bought and used once or twice, and over years and years, and that's quite a lot of garment tied up and never used again, versus being able to reuse it many times on a rental service. Great. Well, that's a very interesting introduction to our main topic, and I can see some comments from our audience there agreeing with you, Sam, about the higher end issue being quite important to consider. So let's turn to our main topic, which is reimagining reverse logistics, navigating costs and trends in fast fashion returns. And I suppose, here we are as Black Friday. Well, Black Friday is already here, isn't it? We certainly, I'm sure worldwide we're seeing it. Certainly in the UK, we're seeing lots of emails and marketing saying, Black Friday deals, even though it's a few weeks away or 10 days away. That'll no doubt lead to a tidal wave of returns a few weeks later. So our first discussion point is analysing the implications of return fees in fast fashion. And certainly there's been quite some coverage earlier in the year. I think we even featured it on Supply Chain Talk, that some retailers have been charging for returns, or even, banning customers from their sites because they've returned too much. A quick sort of snapshot, people like Zara charging in the UK £2.95 for a return. Primark say you've got to return it at your own cost. And in fact, all the retailers, including Shine, who don't charge for returns, but they all state that the tags must be attached. I don't know if that's something that's more recent, to avoid that wear it at a party. I mean, I guess you can tuck the tag in, but nonetheless, certainly retailers are now being much stricter in what they're saying about that. So I guess, Mustafa, turning to you, how effective are return fees in reducing returns? Do they make the customer think twice, or is there a risk that the customer will say, well, I'm not sure which size it is, I'd normally order 2 sizes and return the one that doesn't work. But if they're going to charge me, what the hell? I'm going to order a lot of sizes, and I'm going to just have the whole rail there, and I'm going to return the ones I don't want. So what are your thoughts on how effective returns can be?
Yes. Thank you very much. We are facing like a new trends, as I mentioned, and maybe Samantha mentioned about the quality. For example, Sarah, about maybe 2 decades ago, we talked about quality, but now we are talking about like a design. That's why Zara has this strategy to reduce the quality, and also by designing new, maybe according to the recent fashions. As I mentioned, I'm not fan of the words like pure, like returning or maybe renting. We are talking about trends like Thomas Friedman in his book mentioned that we are facing circularity. Rent and return is part of that maybe map. Okay, so we shouldn't like look at the reverse logistic like a 0 and 1. Maybe if I return, this is not a pure return. Maybe I can design it to be your designer. Maybe I can give it to your local showroom, and another person can use that. We have several strategies after internet, after AI. Maybe I can wash it and then send it. Maybe when I want to go to that maybe local market, I can bring myself without, for example, paying like the post or DHL or FedEx. Okay, so if we don't consider this map, this circular map, we cannot now in this year, in this era after AI, we cannot talk about the pure rent, pure maybe reverse. But this is the reality. Now we have rent and return. I understand, but if you want to make like you asked me as part of like a university, we should consider as the part of the whole. And if you think in this way, you can face some technologies and science, not only solve this problem, but it opens a new era, and you can use for your marketing, and you can use for maybe future design by maybe simple slogan, like anyone that rent or maybe used my maybe clothes, it can be itself. It's like the new designer, or you can be your own designer, and that's why the game will change.
Okay, so you're really saying we should just change the whole model, and a return fees neither here nor there. Ray, what are your thoughts? Do you return fees? Obviously, it's a risk that can really depress sales if it puts someone saying, "Well, I'm not going to buy it from you because I'm going to have to pay for a return of it." What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, apparel returns. I mean, if you look at the US, where they charge for returns, the apparel rates are between 38 to 45%, which actually has a huge impact in terms of the business model. Where they don't charge, the returns rates have gone down to 20%. So
Really?
actually they see some benefit. However, it still doesn't control it. But interestingly, picking up on a point that Mustafa made, there is a retailer in the UK, and I can't explain who they are, who is looking at developing what they call their VIP customers. And these VIP customers would receive the product, and if they didn't want it and they wanted to return it, what they would do is go through the portal, and the portal would issue them a returns label. And as long as they packaged it and put it back to the standard that they received it, that product could be sent on to the next customer. However, they could then redivert it to a store that needs inventory or something. So I think people are playing around with the models because returns are so high. It costs you 3 times, logistics costs are 3 times more just to get that product repurposed and back into good stock. So you've got to find alternative methods to move product around. And I think Mustafa's picked up on a point. I'm not sure whether it will happen or not. It's very early stages.
That's a fascinating model that you're describing. That would be very interesting to see. Lots of issues there, but absolutely, it's a great one. And of course, the message would be to the consumer: please be responsible because you're saving the planet, etc. by not having this extra transport. Very interesting model. Sam, what are your thoughts on is the charging a fee? Is that the simplest way of just depressing returns without too much hit on your sales?
Well, I mean, I entirely agree with Mustafa on that as well, and everything he said. But I mean, it's worth noting that it's not really designed to reduce return rates. This is come from Brexit. You know, it's only in EU law where free returns are enshrined, and we left the EU and we didn't take that law with us. So naturally, everyone's gone, aha, we can now charge for it. And so it was never designed for that, because returns are always expensive and businesses are always looking at ways to reduce the returns rates. When I worked for Wiggle, which was a big online sports retailer, we would have massive amounts of data. I mean, we had 11 return reasons for returns, and we would go over them every week. You know, how are we going to make this better? How do we decrease those returns rates? And I do think we just have to be a little bit more clever. I really like what Ray has said, you know, in terms of bringing in that policy of actually, should people be charged based on how much work is having to be done at the next level? And it's really interesting. I've just seen Tim come up with a comment about Next charging for a fee via courier. But also it's worth noting in that sense that Next had taken a massive stake in Every. So there is a little bit of, you know, financial interest at play there.
Yeah, but I think it's a very interesting point that Tim makes, and as an example, which is, you know, if you return it to store, we're not going to charge you because we're not incurring so much cost. And I guess the store can look at it there and then and say, oh, hang on a minute, this is totally wrecked. I'm sorry, I'm not, you know, this is not fit for resale. I'm not processing a return, you know, off you go, take it with you if you want to. Or, you know, they can say, yeah, looks absolutely fine, thank you very much. And of course, as we all know, getting that footfall, getting that customer back into the store, they can perhaps, you know, get something alternative, get the size they wanted straight away. So it's a great example that Tim gives us of a major retailer like Next. And Sam, just very quickly, because you mentioned, oh, you know, so say if you can't share the information, but I mean, with those 11 reasons a Wiggle, were there, you know, was sizing the big issue? Was it photography that people just can't quite tell it until you've physically got the product in your hand? What were the big reasons? I know it wasn't fast fashion exactly, but I wonder what are the biggest drivers of returns that in your experience in that company and others?
It is always sizing, to be honest. I mean, it's a little bit skewed because the first reason down is always it's too big. So you kind of then had to sort of take a view on that. But yeah, nearly all of them, because it was performance product, was sizing.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Let's move to our second discussion point, which is best practices for managing return volumes during high demand periods. So of course, you know, we're going to hit a very high demand period indeed, and no doubt a fairly high return period, because people tend to return quite quickly, I think. So I guess the question is, what are the best practices? And I think particularly the speed of being able to process items and get them back into stock. I mean, if they're damaged, you know, there's not quite the priority. I guess you want to kind of reassure your customer that you process their return, but if it's damaged, you know, you're not going to be able to resell it properly. So I guess that speed of getting it back into stock is really important. And Mustafa, I wonder if you've got examples or thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you very much. You know, when it comes to the issue of like speed or time, especially in reverse logistics, maybe the main we have some like maybe routing, maybe some finding maybe the best way, or trucks, or scheduling, you know, anyway. But maybe again another point that help us for maybe to watch the speed and time and help us in this matter like reverse logistics is to be like to be aligned or maybe aggregate with other companies that, for example, as you mentioned in this, like in Mexico, we can say like a Buen Fin, like maybe the Black Friday. The amazing point is that even we have like a commercial maybe places or market that we have like old bazaar or market or something like that. But nowadays, again, we don't use this item like to be aligned together, to be integrated together, to send and receive, especially for reverse logistics, like using the same container, using the same maybe port or hub to help us. I mean, still, I don't know what is happening, that they are working like independently. You know, if they only use this item to send and receive the, for example, Zara and maybe another, maybe Nike, maybe Adidas, or if they work together like a joint, I don't want to say like a joint venture, but at this point, in supply chain, we talk about like integration horizontally. I mean, two competitors, but they are working together to buy, send, buy, sell, and using for reverse logistics. I think it can help at least 50%, like the speed, like a problem, can solve that problem.
Okay, thank you. Ray, your thoughts on best practice for processing returns, managing the return volumes?
Yeah, I think there's two things that we have to take into account. First of all, once you know you've got a return coming back, so that might be through your unit using a returns portal like Revenue or a Recollect or whatever, you know that you're going to get it back. If it's coming from an international market, say coming back from the US to the UK, you're going to lose that inventory for probably 2 to 3 weeks. So again, it has an impact in terms of your availability. If you're a fast fashion, and obviously you're looking at dropping fashion products every couple of weeks or whatever, that product becomes out of fashion the minute it arrives back in your warehouse. So in other words, it becomes less of a priority to turn that product around. So when we look at best practice, we say, well, where's the product coming back from? Which is the market that we can turn around quicker? So if you're in the UK, you're going to concentrate on the UK product that's being returned. Time-wise, I think most apparel returns businesses now will look at trying to turn that product around within 24 hours. And that's doing a cursory look and saying, yeah, this is absolutely fine. It's come back perfect. It looks like the customer didn't even take it out of the wrapper. So actually, we can process that quickly. If it looks like it's come back all creased and folded and shoved in a bag, then that's going to take, you're going to put that to one side and go, that becomes the next stage. That will take slightly longer. If it needs repressing and going through sort of like repairing or whatever, you're probably going to find that that's going to take you probably 3 or 4 days to get that back into inventory. But what retailers, what they've got to do, the owners of the products, is they've got to get that inventory back available to make it saleable, because without that, then effectively you're looking at the impact of huge markdowns and write-offs of fashion product. So I think there's a classification that says, where is the product coming from, and therefore do you process it quicker because of that? That's a couple of things that we're facing, that we're working with at the moment with people.
Yeah. Some really great insights there, and Sam, I know you'll have some great things to share. It's worth sort of, I think what that brings home, isn't it, is that actually I think it brings home the whole question of where you distribute from. And I think, Sam, you were mentioning you had a great example from Australia, which you may want to share or not. But it does bring home that if you're a US retailer selling into the UK, or say you're a UK, in your example, Ray, a UK retailer selling and shipping to US customers, well, although it's a huge expense for you to set up an operation in the US, via a third party or whatever, perhaps, and have stock sitting there, the huge advantage is that stock can really work. And if you're getting 20 or 30% of it sent back, and you can resell a good amount of that at full price, actually, that's a really important cost, rather than just saying, oh my goodness me, it's going to cost me a lot of money to have a logistics contract over there. So it's a fascinating thought. So Sam, your thought, I don't know whether you want to bring your Australian example in or pick up in other ways on this question.
No, I think I've got a couple of examples actually, and they're both from Wiggle, which now I get to talk about because Wiggle doesn't exist in the form that it did when I was there. But the interesting one about Australia, and because of Wiggle, for people who don't know, Wiggle was the largest online retailer, sports retailer in the world. We shipped to every country, I think with the exception of North Korea. And with that, we all shipped it out of one hub in the UK, and it was a massive operation. And we were the largest wetsuit retailer. Now, wetsuits are a nightmare because they don't adhere to normal size guides, and you just can't communicate that with customers in a good way. And Wiggle had a couple of ways of dealing with this. The one that was designed in-house was to create an eBay site. And that's where, because this is the thing with wetsuits as well, people put it on and it's too small, they will rip it. They never wore the gloves. They never did what we asked them to do when trying it on for the first time. So nearly always, the wetsuits would return damaged. And we'd put them on the eBay site. And sometimes they'd go for more money than it was on sale for some unknown reason. But the eBay site made a ridiculous amount of cash just through faulty returns. And then there was another instance, and this one is the Australia one. You know, shipping to Australia is expensive and there's duty, but it was still cheaper for people to buy wetsuits from Wiggle. And so there was a wetsuit retailer. He had a shop, I think somewhere in Melbourne. And he was sick and tired of people coming in, trying on wetsuits and then ordering them from Wiggle. So what he decided to do was he came to Wiggle and said, give me every wetsuit in all your size and people from Australia can come and try them on. He'll charge them $50 and then they can order from you and they don't return. And that saved his business. And that's what he did. He didn't sell a single wetsuit. But that was sort of that really great experience of being actually taking responsibility within that space. And it worked really well. We saw our returns rates plummet from Australia after that.
Thank you. So some really fantastic examples there, some really interesting insights into just both the sort of processing and handling high volumes and just ways of avoiding the returns in the first place in some cases. That's a very interesting example. Thank you, Sam. Let's move to our third question, our third discussion point, which is sustainability versus costs, which is balancing eco-friendly practices with return charges. So I guess the question here is, how strong can the eco message be without depressing sales? Because if you were, on the topic of fast fashion, if you were really strict and said, do you really want to buy this garment, which you may use a few times and then it will fall to bits and you'll throw it away? Because if you're too strong on the message, you may not get many sales at all. But are there other things? I mean, for example, we talked already a little bit about delivery and returns and the use of stores, which can be very effective if you have stores yourself, and also increasingly lockers are being used. And certainly I know that some recent research shows how low the carbon footprint of delivering or returning via collection lockers, high street lockers, or indeed collection and drop off local stores, things like that. So I guess there's messages like that can help as well. So in terms of that sustainability versus cost debate, Mustafa, what are your thoughts to share there?
Thank you. Now in November 2024, thanks to the maybe training, to social media, to the trends, our people, our customers understand the sustainability. So they understand the green marketing. If they go to like a Starbucks, they use the big like a cup to use that one instead of using even the like a paper. And also we have some technologies, as I mentioned, like AI. I think we can change the market. Our customers are understanding the sustainability. Logistics literally means transportation and warehousing. Both of them don't add any value on our business. They are pure cost, transportation, warehousing. And also in terms of sustainability, both of them are destroying sustainability, our environment and also social, transportation and warehousing. So we are doing something like not good. And even for retail logistics, if we emphasize again on transportation and logistics, we are making it worse. Okay, our customers should understand that. And also by this strategy, they can understand how to use like a simple installing application using AI about like a oversize you mentioned. So return should be the last maybe option for both parties. And between these two extremes, we should use like the middle, like partners or parties that can help us like sending, as I mentioned, sending to like other customers using AI, using maybe applications, or helping them by, for example, when I want to go to maybe near to that market, I should bring it with myself, not sending it with maybe another maybe transporters or something like that. So anyway, when it comes to the points of the, like in terms of logistics, the pure logistics, we are destroying everything. Okay, even we add reverse logistics, so we are emphasizing on that. And I am personally, I'm not the fan of that one, and I'm sure that it again destroy the sustainability.
Okay, thank you. Ray, what are your thoughts on you know, the eco message, the sustainability message, and how you sort of manage that?
I think, first of all, what we have to consider is that consumption has got completely out of hand. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to influence people who have got so used to consumption being part of their day-to-day life, is that it's really almost impossible to change that culture. There are some things that we can actually do. And again, I'm not saying it's not sustainable, but there are certain things that we can do about, you know, picking up what Samantha said about, you know, getting the sizing right so that we can reduce, because what we're not addressing the root cause. We're trying to go after, let's throw sustainability at this. Let's try and see if the consumers understand but all they're going to do is they're going to carry on buying more product from Shine or Temu, and it's still going that rate. So I think it's about improving the way that we do measuring. You know, things like ASOS and a few of the others have got these accurate self-measurement, whatever. I think it's also about getting customers to read reviews. And if they read those reviews and it says these products are always too small, then they can learn very quickly as well. And then the other thing is also about the type of products. And when Sam was talking about the quality is going down, well, we're using cheaper fabrics, and therefore they don't maintain themselves. So therefore we're guaranteeing that we're going to end up returns. So sustainability may be invest in the right technology and the right fabrics and the right garments, because you're certainly going to have to do that, so that actually you can then reduce some of these costs. Because at the moment, I don't see anybody that's addressing this completely. I don't have an example that can say someone's got this right.
Yes, that's interesting. And I suppose, Sam, thinking about the sizing thing, I mean, I guess the wetsuit's such a problem because people don't buy wetsuits that often. You know, they last a reasonable amount of time. So whereas I guess with some fashion brands, you get your loyal customer, and they know part of their loyalty is because they know what fits them, and therefore, I guess I don't know. Did you see that in repeat customers? Would you see their return rates become less, and they order one size and get it right? I suppose it's just interesting thinking that a loyal customer not only buys more from you, but probably returns less because they know your sizes.
Yes, I mean, it's a little bit of that. I mean, wetsuits are difficult because they're sort of a next to skin in how they fit. So you would give, your size guide was weight and height, but we never really quite got how people's bodies are distributed. So returns would be bonkers. But yes, like the more you see of a customer, you know, because any customer that's invested is unlikely to send products back, with the exception of when it's on sale, because they do just buy things because they're like, oh, it's a great price, it's not my size, I'll try it and see.
Yeah.
So we did always see a lot of that, particularly after Black Friday. But yeah, I mean, sizing is the big problem. And as both Ray and Mustafa said, there is nothing sustainable about returns in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's really where we need to focus our energy, is ensuring that people want that. And it's interesting. A friend said to me the other day that his returns are at 2%, and that is because it's made to order. You know, so if somebody's buying something and it's being made for them, I think it's almost getting into that headspace that, oh, they don't want it to be wrong.
Yes.
You're almost putting responsibility on them for that purchase. Whereas, you know, if you're buying from a big fast fashion retailer, the products are already made. You know,
Yes.
You're buying from a range, and it's not always just a case of size guides as well. It's how things are made. You know, I once had a factory that made one leg longer than the other on a pair of running tights. And so, you know, you're going to get returns on those things. There's lots of processes we can build in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think actually that sort of ties in quite nicely, I think, to both what Ray and Mustafa mentioned earlier, which is that Ray talking about some of the measurement tools that some of the retailers are offering. And Mustafa, you were saying, you know, maybe we'll have AI and other technologies can really help understand to say, you know, given everything we can see about you, maybe I don't know, privacy would allow, we can scan all your photos on Facebook and judge how exactly what shape you are, and therefore really recommend, or indeed, of course, in the future with, you know, 3D and incremental manufacturing, you know, perhaps you can even be literally making every single garment made to measure. But certainly some of those figures of, I think, 20, 30, 40% of returns in some fashion does highlight the issue. And I guess finishing off there, we've got Joe. Joe, I know you've shared lots of interesting thoughts here, commenting how we need
Yes,
to
I wanted to mention this point.
Yeah.
Yes, Joe mentioned. Yes. Actually, thanks to Joe Ingham, thank you very much. I don't know, he or she mentioned the point. Two main points. Actually, maybe thanks to Ray and Samantha, I understand maybe the problem size, but maybe they return because we open this option, not only for size. Maybe Samantha can understand maybe better, because we open this option, so they use this option. And they like sometimes maybe they make like a fun of this option, you know, buying maybe instead of renting, using and then sending back. Maybe we have some people around us that use this the option. So if we open this option, so they use that one, and so that's why I told you that what is the reason, the root, like Ishikawa, like a fish pond. What are the reasons that they option? So for something is inevitable, we should follow because they are customers, we respect them. But I think for this, maybe for fashion at least, because we are facing like some maybe young age, teenage, and they cannot understand and analyze maybe the whole, maybe the problem, maybe they use it sometimes maybe more than it's needed.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I guess, Sam, as you were mentioning before, in the EU, you know, consumer legislation means they've got the right to return if they're buying, you know, remotely and so on. And while in the UK we can now start charging, it's a difficult one. Consumers have certain rights, but understood. So some really fascinating insights there. The 45 minutes has flown by as usual with such an interesting topic. Thank you for many interesting contributions from the audience. I will, with difficulty, pick out a winner. I think I'll go for Tim Higginbotham. Thank you, Tim. You raised a great real example to introduce there. So a Supply Chain Talk mug will be on its way to you. Do all of you join in next week and in future episodes to have a chance of earning one of those. Next week's episode is at the same time, 4 p.m. UK time, and wherever else you are in the world, on the 27th of November. It's going to be hosted by Anna Maria Velika, and the subject is Perfecting Supply Chain Visibility, Vision versus Reality. So that's our topic next week. So it just remains me to say thank you very much for my three fantastic guests, Mustafa Keshtelli from the Technological de Monterrey, Ray Fowler from Ford Partnership, and finally Sam Taylor from The Good Factory. Thank you all three of you for some really great insights there. Thank you for the audience for joining us, and I hope you'll be joining us next week. Goodbye.